All right, Rabbi. I'm been curious, and we've talked about this a little bit, but as Operation Union One rolled around in April and May of 1967, did First Force Recon see increased NVA activity around that time?
Uh, yes, uh, it was a major operation that some of our teams participated in. A number of the battalion teams participated in. Uh, it was to, you know, the southwest of where we south, west of where we were in our camp in Da Nang, and the other half of our company was down in the Chulai area, which was miles south of where we were. So some of the teams would come out of that area along with the battalion because they were further to the south. Uh, but numbers of teams uh, did participate, and Union Union One was a pretty major operation, and that same time period, April, May, and into June when Union Two, uh, to the north up by the Quezon and the mountains around Quezon. Uh, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they called it the hill fights. But that was a monster battles too. Uh, the Union took place in what we call the Quezon Valley, Antenna Valley, uh, the Hip Duck area, which there was a little village of Hip Duck, but it was also a it had its own map sheet of Hip Duck. And the bad guys that were in that area and had moved into the area were, the second NVA division was there, and the third and 21st NVA regiments and third VC regiment. They were all scattered in there. Uh, a lot of activity were in the mountains, in the Quezon Mountains, and a lot of these folks were pretty brazen and were in villages, and you could see them moving in the valleys. And the infantry, uh, their tactic, you know, the Quezon Basin was a fertile agriculture, lots of rice, and it was very important to the NVA and the VC to sustain their food line. And we wanted, well, we being the uh, the Americans, the United States, we wanted to take control and get operational for the rice to deny them. And one of the things with the operation was to try and force the NVA to come out from the mountains and wherever they were strategically hiding, to force them out into more open battle, and which was more conducive to our infantry fighting rather than in the hills. So that's one of the things that are the two things that were really driving that operation. And there were you know, quite a few of the Marine units that were involved in it. And one of the units was Fox Company of 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines. And they were using them, I don't want to say as bait, but as as a as a tip of the spear type thing to try and get the NBA to come out, attack them, since they had quite a force, into the thousands with all the different units they had in those hills. And 2-1, they moved into some of the village areas in the valley, and they were trying to uh, become more friendly, uh, take the burden that we were not the bad guys. We were not harmful to them. We're there to help, that kind of a thing. And get good relations with all those folks that lived in the Quaisans and the different valley, Elephant Valley, or not Elephant Valley, Antenna Valley. And it pretty much worked. And the second, the NBA, they were ready to fight, and they did. But the Quaisan Basin was maybe 15, 20 miles from like the Tam Key area from the coast, and maybe 30, 40 miles from where our home compound was up in Da Nang. And Fox 2-1, roughly around, I want to say April 21 to 25, somewhere pushing towards the end of April. But in that period, Fox 2-1 did make contact and was actually got pinned down. And there was artillery in the area, and they were supported by our airstrikes and stuff like that. But there were some artillery units fairly close, but making fire bases where they could move some of the artillery pieces into better positions and closer to where things were. So they had a lot of support with them. Once they got hit, you also had 3rd Battalion of the 1st Marines, companies from them, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, which I think one of the more known companies was Mike Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, and 5th Marines, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. But companies from all these battalions were in these battles. And it went on very heavily, probably 4 days, maybe a week. And our infantry, units and survived. And, we had support with the artillery and mortar units, which were more conducive. But the operation continued roughly almost 4 weeks. I think it was 27 days. And toward the middle of May was actually the end of Union One. Then I think the operation itself, they claimed nearly 800 of the VC and MBA KIAs, and roughly half of that was NBA. And the Marines lost, I don't know, a little over 100 killed, uh, but a few hundred were wounded. Uh, that would be what pretty much without getting into the history of the infantry. Now, with all of that going on, the recon units were running through the Quaisans, and all this time there were always several recon units in the hills. And in that period, uh, my team, I think it was three different patrols on Union One. And I didn't count them up, but I'd say at least 20 different patrols were run from the battalion. And most of the teams that ran the operation were the same teams. So we were continually flip flopping and moving in and out. Uh, a lot of sightings. A lot of what we did was you come in a certain area and set up OPs, observation posts, and because of the way the infantry was operating, it would push bad guys from the valleys that were coming out of the mountains. They would chase them back into the mountains, and we would we would see where they were moving, or we could see them moving down from the mountains, coordinate with the infantry, and advise them to directions and what we could see was going on. Uh, at the same time, what we were doing, uh, we were in contact with the artillery units and the aerial observers. Primarily, Black Coat was our aerial, and we would go through Black Coat to get airstrikes so that we could contact them, funnel information, and the aerial observer made contact with the jets and coordinated strikes. So a lot of uh, coordination, a lot of a lot of people were involved between the infantry. They have their own weapons platoons between the artillery, between uh, the air wing. Uh, a lot of folks were involved, and we did a lot of damage. Some of the some of the earlier patrols, like during that week, uh, you know, you could catch them moving. I want to say, let me see if I can find it. I made a hand drawn, and there it is. Little hand drawn schematic map here. I don't know if you can see it. Now, this is actually in the book of Killer King that Andy Finlayson had done. And if I can do this upside down, uh, starting over here, Tam Key would be over here to the left on this sheet. And as you're coming across, you can see Hep Duck is down to the south here, the village of Quaison, Antenna Valley, and then 452 was a permanent outpost, and the Sang Thubang River. So all through this area is where these battles were raging, and the Quaison Mountains, surround up high on there. So that would be where we operated from, and all the different patrols. I scribed out quite a few things, and the different, because I was short of time, I ran backwards. And my first patrol into the area was right at the like day 3 or 4 of the big battles. And on that, we had a 21 sightings with over 80 enemy. And we were within the artillery fan. So, we were getting 2 here, 4 here, and different amounts of bad guys. We called 20 fire missions with Arctic Echo was one, and I think it was Chinstrap Delta. Those were 2 of the primary artillery units. Everybody had call signs. And the 81 mortars that we could call and that the grunts used, I remember they were called Cassandra. But all the different teams, numerous sightings, and the fire missions, sometimes you could see results. I mean, and you measured them in confirmed where you could see body counts, probables where you would make the assumption that, I mean, you blew up a hooch after 3 guys went in it and the hooch disappeared. You can assume that those 3 went. So we were all accumulating these numbers. I mean, this particular patrol for us, we got around 30, between confirmed and probables. Sometimes you couldn't see. The enemy that we did see, we were always noting, what were they doing, carrying, what were they wearing. It was pretty amazing that weapons, I mean, lots of AKs, carbines, some with some web gear, cartridge belts, some just had weapons. For the most part, they didn't have, individually, they didn't carry a lot of ammunition. Like we might carry 20, 30 magazines of 18 rounds, that kind of a thing. They may have a handful of magazines and maybe some loose rounds. And packs. Some carried little packs, no packs. and then gigantic packs. That's like backbreaking, and a lot of bicycles. We talked about bicycles earlier. Here, I out in the open, very brazen, gigantic packs on these bicycles. Or at times you would have an enemy riding a bicycle trying to outrun artillery. And I hit on one of them we got a VT round, a variable time round that exploded as this guy was riding, and he disappeared. So you know we claimed it, and since we couldn't find the body, we just called it a probable. Uh, but they would run for hooches. You would, try and hit the hooches. Artillery, the accuracy of the artillery was very good. The units used 105s and 155s, both of them very accurate, and folks did, good job, very quick. And there was some lagging sometimes, where because of a lot of the air support, when there was air support going on in an area, they had to hold in abeyance firing artillery for lack of trying, hitting any of the air and that kind of a thing. There were periods where communication was interrupted, uh, depending on, if when you get into the lowland or if you went into a ravine, uh, our prick 25s a lot, I want to say a direct line of sight type of thing, where if you got into these shallow areas, uh, the tape antenna, it couldn't make contact, and sometimes you would put up the tall whip antenna, maybe 50-50, you might get something, but you had to get back up in high ground again. The folks were using, they were wearing, you would see camouflage utilities. You had a lot of the black pajamas that are pretty typical with the VC. You had different color utility. You had black utilities, green utilities. You had brown uniforms, some simple gray uniforms, green and gray clothing. Occasionally, you saw a white cover, like a white shirt, uh, which was, I want to say, kind of abnormal. On their heads, some wore the straw hats, the coolie looking hat, uh, but quite a few had helmets, and you would see them with the sticks and the tree branches, all that stuff in cami on their helmets. Other guys were wearing khaki uniforms, but quite quite an array, and some of it would show or depict uh, NVA units, the way they were dressed, BC units, and it was easy to tell. On one of our patrols, uh, I was running point, and it was early when we first got inserted, and we were going around like on the side of the hill, and all of a sudden this bad guy jumped up and I started to chase him, try and catch him. But we were still fully loaded, and I didn't even have a drink of water yet, so I had everything. And the guy flipped his pack, and Rocky Schmidt was there with me, and I went to grab the pack, and Rocky chased the guy, but we were on a very steep mountain, and this guy like went over the edge, and it was, oh, I don't know how steep it was, but this guy like disappeared in an instant, and he kept his AK, and we didn't see him again. Rocky came back up, and I got his and I got his pack, and in it he had the green uniform and, and a bag of rice. So he wasn't going very far. So he didn't have much food. There was no water and no ammunition. So it appeared that whatever he had in the magazine in his AK was what he had. But he was fast. He jumped and ran really quick because he didn't want no part of us because we snuck up and he was by himself. And I kept the clothes for a while and then I found just threw them away. It's like, yeah, I don't need this stuff. But we went on about our business and found a good OP, and uh, I can visualize somewhere. I have a picture that we were on an OP and we could look down in the valley, and the mountain was steep, and we were on like a rock that kind of jutted out with a tree that gave us a little shade. And for like 3 or 4 days, we just sat there and uh, made sightings and made life miserable as they tried to move into the valley, into the village, toward the grunts, or when the grunts would sweep, a lot of these guys would run away, and we could tell the grunts where they went, and the grunts would, you know, call in a strike, whether it be mortars or an airstrike, that kind of thing, and it would kind of, I want to say, ebb and flow. They didn't really go away, the bad guys. I mean, after the bigger battles in April, it continued into May, and the folks uh, on our uh, adventures, the recon units, it was business as usual into May, still sighting, running into bad guys in the mountains. Uh, the one battalion team, and they had an enemy uh, approach their position and actually Chuhoyed and turned himself into the recon team. And the recon team, then turned him over to the Fifth Marines, who interrogated him and did whatever they needed to do and get him to whatever intelligence. But kind of odd, but Chuhoys did occur. Some of them guys been fighting for years, and some of them finally had enough. But a lot of different things, happened as you're doing this. The river that ran through that area, through Antenna Valley, uh, a lot of it you see toward the west, out toward when you get towards our Hillfield 452, which was named OP Blankenship from my sergeant that got killed in March. And across the river, let's see, the river was the Song Thubong, but Song Thubong. And the only operating, the coal mine was out there. So the bad guys were always near there. But down on the river, there were a lot of sampans that bad guys were sighted putting materials in boxes, containers. They were trying to move stuff down back towards the Quaison and going back towards the east, toward Heptuck, into the areas that NVA and stuff would need resupply. And of course, the guys had, had a lot of fun trying to blow up sampans. And I think there were 6 that were sighted in. They did get two of them. So varied attacks, whether it be in the river or on the ground. The LZs that we had to use, I mean, somewhat limited, and a lot of booby traps were in the area. And sometimes guys found simple grenades with a tripwire. Some actually found bouncing Betty pressure mines and dug them up and deactivated, however they did that. And around some of the LZs, you had punji stakes. You had anti-helo. What they would do would have like bamboo poles and string like an X. And when a helicopter would come down, and then it would hit the whether it be rope or vines or wire, and that pressure forcing down would set off a booby trap to blow up a helicopter. And we encountered all that kind of stuff. And again, you did a lot of stuff where you came in further in the mountains, humped over, and then obtained a position. So between all of the clothing, the weapons, and then a lot of trails. And on the trails, again, you had very clean trails. We would find beaten down areas of vegetation so that you knew somebody harbored and rested there. And sometimes there were actually dug in foxholes. There was one area, and the team came up to this trail, and the trail actually had a sign saying something like "Death to those who enter," and it had like an X. And you tell our guys that kind of stuff. Of course they want to go that way and see what's going on. And if the infantry was up there, they surely would go down there. But a lot of odd things. And radio interference. Different units, whether it be infantry or recon units. The bad guys, would capture radio or some of our radios and learn the frequencies, and you would get interference. Sometimes it would just be Vietnamese jabbering, and it could be like an ARVN unit. Other times Uh, like while we were out there, we got what sounded like a European accent with a hint of Oriental in it. Uh, you got different stuff, and then you would get uh, somebody trying to mimic your call sign. The extract when we extract, it was you always had to be careful uh, because they're watching the LZs and they know when a choppers are close and it's like pop a smoke and show them where we were. And if the bad guys were they nearby and on a radio, uh, I pop a yellow smoke, they may pop a yellow smoke, and they'll try and confuse the chopper pilots. And one particular case out there in the operation, uh, battalion team called for getting their extract, and as the bird was coming close, uh, a yellow smoke was popped, and the pilot goes, uh, "I have yellow smoke," and the team leader for the battalion says, "I'm popping green," and the gunships then went after the yellow smoke. So that one was fortunate, but many things uh, occurred that you always had to be careful, regardless of what you were doing. Uh, I don't recall any, you know, arc lights at that point, but as the infantry would push through the valleys, and you're going from like Quaison Valley through the Antenna Valley Pass into Antenna Valley, going toward the coal mine. Going that way, it seemed like there was a bunker or a small structure that the enemy would stop and get uh, coordinated, some kind of information, and then continue to move on. But for Union One, that continued all the way up into May, mid-May, and the VC and they weren't wiped out. We didn't demolish them or anything, and we were seeing, you know, quite a bit of the same activity. I mean, they were still in these hills and mountains, and you know, Union One was successful to a point, and then the response that you know to the VC and the NBA still being in the area and not wanting to give up the valleys, uh, that was the reason for two. And Union Two kept right on going, just like for us as Union One had. And
Well, Rabbi, I got a question for Union One. In the operations around the Antenna Valley, did you find any evidence of tunnels or any of that in a sense? I know some Marines I've talked to have mentioned they believed that there were tunnels located in the Quaison Valley and through the Antenna Mountain.
uh, I don't know about in the valley, but on the mountains, there were some tunnels, but a lot of caves. There were a lot of caves, and on occasion we would find a tunnel, uh, but being up higher in the mountain, and you could see at different angles, depending where you were, we could find caves, see caves, you'd see people run into them, and we'd call fire missions into all those areas. But oh yeah, there were, yeah, we probably never would have found all the tunnels and stuff like that. But caves were pretty prevalent because you would see a lot of rock. You could see a lot of rock areas, and whenever you had rocks like that, there was some type of caves. There'd be overhangs. Uh, you know, they would wallow out areas under rocks. But they were very good at hiding all that, hiding anywhere. Uh, but you know, for the grunts, they would push them and chase them, and then wonder where they went a lot of times. But that's where they went. They'd run up the hills into the caves, and you could see, and we've seen enemy. They would scurry to an area, and then they would go on a finger. And so they would hide on a finger, looking down to see what the infantry was doing, with not knowing that we were further on the hill or on the mountain and can see. We could peep them while they were peeping them, and then we could call a strike on there. Uh, which is just, it's another reason they hated us because, we were always in their shorts and we were always somewhere. And continuous, we stayed with it and we just rolled with it with what the infantry needed. And many times we would go, you know, we were in the area before they ran the operation. All right, so we're there before it, during it, after it, and then I want to say ever after. I mean, when I came back a couple of years later, we still ran into that area on occasion. But no, you got into Union 2, and a lot of it was the same areas, and our our staff officers and the leadership, they had to do a lot of coordinating with the Vietnamese units because they were originally in the area. The sixth Arvin sixth Arvin Regiment and first Arvin Rangers were the ones that were in that area, and without a doubt, they weren't powerful enough to take on Second NVA Division and different regiments, let alone the VC. I mean, so our people had to coordinate with them, work with them, and that rolled for what, another couple of weeks maybe for Union 2. Not nearly as long, maybe half or a third as long as one. Uh, I want to say parts of Second Battalion, Fifth Marines, uh, First Battalion, Seventh Marines, Second Battalion. A lot of the Seventh Marines, Second Battalion, Seventh Marines were involved in 2, and that was a big area for Seventh Marines, and not not as successful. Then again, the bad guys didn't come out into the open and fight as much as they did in the first one. So there was maybe a little over 100 NVA killed, and maybe no, there was something else. there's a little over 100 Marines killed, but there was over 700 of the bad guys. Just uh, not exposed as it was, and quite a few were captured. They did capture a bunch of guys. They're 20 plus, and as far as I know, they gleaned a lot of information as to who the units actually were, uh, what they may be doing at the time. But once they're captured, what the bad guys are doing changes. So that took that took us through Union Two. Would have been toward the end of May, and teams continued to run there. We started going back into Charlie Ridge, Happy Valley, and going further to the west again, as far as my team running. And battalion kept teams running, in that area. We always had the permanent OP at 452, but you could see Antenna Valley and the river. So, and then eventually the battalion did set up uh, permanent OPs, to the east that way. And life became better. You know, beat up beat up the bad guys pretty good, and but they never really totally went away. So
Well, for
it's
Force
pretty.
Force, when when the Force Recon is on these bigger operations, what's the protocol if you make contact? Do you try to break away and rejoin some of the line companies operating within the AO, or is it just regular standard? You start rolling back until you can get extracted from an LZ.
Primarily, we would run, uh, but depending on the situation, but we would run as we normally would. Uh, Small unit contact. I mean, you battle them. Either they run away or we break contact. And if you can break contact and shake them, they're not tracking you. You continue with the mission, find a new OP. Uh, I don't recall any of the groups having to like move off the mountain and go down toward the grunts or have the grunts as a reaction force on Union. I mean, out in Happy Valley, Charlie Ridge, I mean, at different times, uh, we've called grunts as reaction forces. But I want to say the teams were pretty fortunate that didn't didn't run into too many large groups. I know one of the battalion teams had, they cited, I don't know, 70 bad guys, but about 25 of them were about 25 meters from the team. So something like that. They didn't initiate contact and advised the grunts as to what was going on as these folks moved on. The team sizes, uh, a lot of the teams, took a few extra, some extra guys. I mean, a lot of the teams, took M60 machine guns, particularly the battalion. A lot of teams had stoners and the light machine guns, and our teams, we ran 6 or 7 up to 10 or 11. we were a little, I mean, we were shorthanded because April, April until mid-May, we had a lot of guys go to jump school in Okinawa. I mean, out of my platoon, we had three, and Pistorino, Hawk, and Pee Wee. The three of them came back right at the start of Union Two. So Mike walked in the door. It's like, okay, we're gonna go practice rappelling on the cliff tomorrow, and we came back from that, and then the next day we were going out on Union Two. So he didn't get to rest much after coming back from jump school, and but uh, that's how it went. We ran maybe 4 days apart on Union, hit command cleanup, and pretty much you were getting a frag order. You're going back out in 2 days, and for us, business as usual. Uh, the thing with working an operation with the infantry is they're moving and pushing and fighting with the bad guys, and bad guys are getting all stirred up and they're getting pushed around, and then they move back up into the mountains, and it's like, well, besides normally finding them in the mountains, now they're pissed off and they're getting pushed up into the mountains. But uh, good adventures. I mean, lots of things happened. We were fortunate to not lose a lot of people. I mean, I'd really have to go research, and from what I looked at in the last week, real quick, uh, didn't really lose people. We were very fortunate. A couple wounded, a short round, artillery round, wounded a couple in the battalion. I remember that one. I'd have to check. I think we still had some PRUs that we were training and taken to the bush. Most of them were still in the battalion, and I know uh, one of them got killed. But no, the guys were, I'd say, very efficient in all the teams. The battalion teams, were a little bigger. They ran a few more guys. Uh, I would say normally probably 9 to 13 or so, maybe a little more depending. But when you know you're gonna have a lot of activity, a couple extra guys is always a good idea, I guess. But no, that's pretty much without without going through patrol by patrol. You know, lots of them. I mean, you can just go through them.
Well, and I think for next part, I want to do that, especially for this time period of going through those patrols from Union 1 and 2 individually, of specifically what you and your team are seeing out there on like a day by day basis, and kind of start that narrative point of view of the job of Force Recon in April May 1967.
Yeah, we can do that.
Outstanding, Rabbi. Well, with that being said, thanks for your service. Welcome home as always, and hopefully your day gets a little less chaotic.
He, yeah, hopefully it will. Hopefully it will.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, thanks. Good to
Bye
see you.
now.
Bye.